Hey, hiya, hiya. We're back again with another one of these hangs where I hang myself. I've been doing it in the business for a long time. But I want to introduce somebody that is, he's an interesting guy, if you see his face up there, who has been on my show a number of times on the radio, but maybe you didn't see his face on my radio, but you saw it on Court TV. That's Wunsch, who's a famous attorney. And he also has put some wonderful deals together, including getting me to do the documentary at Paris Island with the Marines, which we did famously. And that's on YouTube if you want to watch it. It was great, The Making of a Marine. And, Albert's done a lot of things with me, and one of them was to be a guest on the show with authors. And I was at my daughter's house over the weekend for Father's Day up northern Florida without a mask. And because, if I wore one, they wouldn't know who I am. So, the kids haven't seen me in a while. Now, here's what I have, Albert. I have the shows you've appeared on my MP3, but I don't have an MP3 player. So I guess I'm going to have to go and get one at a thrift shop, go to the Salvation Army or something. But look at all these. Every time that you had somebody on there who was an author, famous author, we had Brian Rigg on, a former Marine expert the other day, Holocaust expert, and he was, I think you brought him to the show one time.
Yes, Brian was one of the ones that I brought in.
Yeah, and I got all these things, but they're useless, aren't they? Because nobody has an MP3 anymore. Do you have one of those?
No, I do not.
Sounds like a weapon, doesn't it? I'm going to get my MP3, So,
yeah, no, I don't have that. I do have them, though, on CD.
Oh, you have them then? Oh,
yeah, because back in those days, Myra was nice enough to make sure that everybody would get a CD of the show.
That was Myra Channon, who was the producer.
Myra Channon, that's correct.
Oh, yeah.
The great one. And
known as Mother Wonderful.
That's exactly right. And she would get she would give us those, and I would keep them, and I've kept all of them. And we had some incredible guests. We did that one show that was 4 hours with Vince Bugliosi, the man who prosecuted Charles Manson, and then wrote the book on the Kennedy assassination. We had him on for 4 hours. And then we did the Civil War roundtables, which were very well acclaimed. And
way ahead of their time for what's going on now.
2 hours with Ted Sorensen. I mean, how do you do better than that?
That's not Jay Sorensen.
No. The speechwriter for John F. Kennedy.
Yeah. So we've had so many people. And Winston Churchill's daughter was on there, I think, or his granddaughter. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
We've had one person after the other, but we you know why? It was the only show in the world that had authors, except for television. Where they did the C-SPAN and
that's right.
The educational channels, even PBS. I think Charlie Rose stopped doing authors for a while. It's boring to people who are not interested in their particular writing or the book, or who are not well read. The country is not well read right now. However, everybody is reading email and they're reading text. So we know how to spell, don't we? Or do you rely on spell check when you're writing a book?
Well, I rely on spell check when I'm writing my letters and I'm writing my, chapters and things along those lines. But I know that, my kids, with all that media, it's all abbreviations.
Yeah, well, I'm from Buffalo and all of mine are in Polish.
That helps.
But, it does help, actually. Dzień dobry. So I got a lot of things to go over with you, Al. We want to talk to you, but I want to show everybody what's going on, why I'm so anxious all the time and nervous. I have coffee nerves because Americans are not run on Dunkin'. This is my coffee for the week.
Cafe Trieste, another old WO sponsor.
No, it was never a sponsor.
Never was a sponsor?
No, I had to pay for it. Are you kidding? No payola here.
Oh,
this is
boy.
Look at how my coffee arrives, right? Would you say?
I screwed up on that one. I should have got sponsor the show.
Well, I know, but Dunkin' Donuts is not running America, or Dunkin', as they call it. America runs on, I don't know what the hell America runs on. It runs on BS. That's what it runs on. So we have a lot of things going on. You represent the police, I think, in New Jersey, if I got that right. Can we talk about that for a minute?
I've got 21 unions, which encompass 27 towns in New Jersey.
Yeah.
In Bergen County, Hudson County, Passaic County, and that's right near the George Washington Bridge. And then I have a couple in Union County.
Yeah. Well, all these guys are leaving. They're going to have kind of a cop-out the way this is happening.
Actually, they're not leaving. In fact, the new police officers that came on within the last couple of years are now required to do 30 years before they can get their pension. In the old days, it was 25.
Now you made it sound like a sentence.
It basically is a sentence, and 30 years is a long time.
Yeah.
That these poor guys have to put up with everything and then stay out of trouble.
Well, I don't know how this is going to balance out because everybody's mad at something. You know, it's an amazing turnabout of America because we had good boundaries and we also had good values and we were more polite. I think everybody's been watching too much Judge Judy, Howard Stern, Imus, all these guys that are outspoken. Jerry Springer, you can go through the whole list. Morton Downey, everybody who's ever been outspoken. Did America get permission to be rude somewhere?
Well, I think we go through these phases every 10 years or so, that there is an anti-cop sentiment, and then there is a love the cop sentiment, and then there's an anti-cop sentiment. I mean, I've seen it happen, and right now we're actually in a, obviously hate the cop sentiment, and they want to do things like defund. I mean,
wait, what does that mean when they want to defund? Does that mean they want to take their money away?
They want to take money away. They want to stop police officers from being paid, and they want to disband police departments. So then we'll have sort of like the Oxbow incident going on in America, where we'll have nothing but police officers that are no longer police officers. They're bounty hunters. And there's nothing but posses getting together and going out and trying to extract justice. It's going to be a real problem. And it's a nightmare. I mean, you know what happens when we have people who aren't professionals that are police officers. Take a look at what happened in Florida with that Mr. Zimmerman, who was a wannabe police officer and was a glorified security guard that was allowed to carry. Yeah, he ended up shooting somebody.
Yeah, and we wore hoodies ever since, and it's 90 degrees.
That's exactly what was going on there.
Why are people right now? Why are we? I mean, you're a humanist, and I know you are, and I think you were educated by the Jesuits, so I shouldn't even ask you this. Jesuits, the brothers.
Jesuits as the college, Salesians as the high school, and then the Irish Christian as the law school.
Yeah, so you
as the graduate school.
Yeah, so you've had a lot of good training, good values, and based on Christian principles, I would say 10 Commandments also, which is
Judeo-Christian.
Yeah, Judeo-Christian. We have a hard time with some people who are running for office now who are Muslim, because they seem to want to. When I say they, there's a woman in particular who's an aggravating person. I even forget her name. She's out of New York, but. Are we having a religious war and a pandemic war, and are we having a Republican Democrat war? How many wars are we going to have? We got more than we had when Roosevelt was in office.
Well, I don't know if we're necessarily having a religious war, but I mean, I do see that there is some bias going on with regards to Muslim, and I don't understand why. I mean, it's fine with me. Let them come into office if they have the desire to serve. I mean, there is nothing more giving than a person who serves in a political office. I mean, I understand that people say that there's a lot of getting involved with that and that they do it for a reason or whatever. But when I sit in these meetings as borough council, and I see how many hours these people who are basically volunteers, they got elected, but they volunteered to run, and then they were elected in. How much time they put in on this job, and the thanklessness that this job entails, I give them a lot of credit. I don't care what religion they are, as long as they're willing to serve, they're fine by me.
Yeah, well, there's a good sentiment in what you're saying, but there's also an undercurrent all of the time. It seems to be fueled by something dark, something evil, something that comes from another place that I don't live. I don't know what that is.
I mean, the problem is because we see politics as evil. We see politics as a good versus bad, and it's not that. It shouldn't be that. Okay, it's what makes the streets get paved. It's what makes the garbage get picked up. It's what makes your police departments run. It's what makes your fire departments run. I mean, it has a very civil aspect to it that is, if we don't have it, we have anarchy.
And it looks like we're going to have that, doesn't it? It
No,
looks like it.
I don't think so. I don't
No?
think. No. I mean, like I said, every 10 years, there's always a vetting that goes on with regards to police departments, and they're evil and they're this and they're that. And then 9/11 came, and all of a sudden they were the greatest in the world. Everybody loved the police. They were in the fire departments and everything else. It's a cyclical process. It's a love-hate relationship, and it's been that way forever. You can go back to the Civil War and the draft riots that were going on in New York City, which occurred in July of 1863. But those draft riots, there was a majority of them were Irish firemen and Irish police officers that were kind of running rampant, and that they were civil service that were not happy with their low pay and not happy with what was going on and didn't want to be drafted, and that the rich man's war, poor man's fight. So you see that. And then, of course, we saw that again in the 60s when there were the draft riots then, and there were the demonstrations and things along those lines. Rich man's war, poor man's fight. So we go through these cyclical phases, and then things even out and go for a few years, and then there's another light to a match, to a keg, and then it explodes.
Well, I have a good memory for things, as you probably know. I remember things that probably most people would dismiss, like the night that my wife. No, well, never mind that one. But I have a good memory for things, and I want to remind you and everybody that little Korean from North Korea in December said, "We have a Christmas gift for you." And we thought it was a missile coming, or some super missile, but instead we got this pandemic. So I got the idea that he's tied into the Chinese, but nobody wants to talk about what this is and where it came from. Is it because we're going to disrupt the global economy? Is that what the reason is? What's your opinion?
I think that people have discussed where it's come from. I think that there has been, even in the United States, an anti-Chinese bias that's been going on with regards to seeing restaurants being tagged and graffitied, people being taunted and things along those lines. So I don't think there's any doubt we know where this started. I think that there needs to be a recognition that these wet markets have to go away. I mean,
do you really believe it came from an animal to a person, or do you think it was in a lab? That's the argument.
I have no reason to doubt that, and it does make sense. It seems plausible to me. I can't say for sure. I'm not a scientist, and I haven't done a study on it.
Well, why doesn't someone tell us what it is?
Well, I think
does anybody in the government ever tell the truth? Do they?
This is a very different type of government than we've ever had in the United States, led by a man who is a very different leader than we've ever had in the United States. So, I think it's a learning curve for us all with regards to what's going on with his administration. Once you have an opinion, then you no longer have a job, which is
Well, it sounds like everybody I ever worked for.
Well,
I want to tax your memory a little bit. Do you remember you brought an author to the show one night from Northwestern University, and he wrote a book called China Inc.? Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
China Inc. And it was China Incorporated. This is like, 15 years ago or so?
It's got to be at least 15 years.
And the guy was right on about what was going to happen with the economy. He was talking about how we're going to have to surrender all of our rights. If we do business with the Chinese, we have to surrender our copyrights. and the plans for building, and they're going to have that because they're a committee, and we have individual manufacturers here, but they have a committee. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I mean, it's funny. We had another author on that did it was called The Great Influenza, which talked about the pandemic of 1918 and, what was going on with that and what happened in the United States. And it's eerie how 100 years later, basically 100 years later, almost the same exact things happened in this country that happened back in the pandemic of 1918. So the China Inc., I vaguely remember that, but the Great Influenza actually had a rebirth with regards to that book. And I was actually talking on Court TV about that book and ended up, I'm sure, selling a number of copies for the author who would come in. It was a phenomenal book and a phenomenal study on how it was passed through the communities and how communities did stupid things that allowed this thing to go by and allowed this thing to fester and to take over and, kill as many people as it did. And that pandemic killed a lot more people than the one we have now.
The one we have now is a shutdown of the country. I don't think we had that then.
We did that in 1918. We shut down the country. Yes, we shut down the country, and we were in war on that time. So it was a much different situation. And the problem was that you had places like Camp Merritt in Cresskill, New Jersey, which was a large boot camp where these guys would come, and you'd have people from Pocahontas, Iowa, in the same dormitory-style rooms with somebody from Brooklyn, New York. And obviously, the person from Pocahontas, Iowa, where you didn't even have to put an address to get a letter to someone, you just would put their name, Pocahontas, Iowa, and it would get to them. And in Brooklyn, you would need to have not only that, but the apartment number and the zip code and the whole 9 yards. Those people together were a disaster because the people from Pocahontas, Iowa, didn't have the buildup or the ability to combat infection that the people who've been living on top of each other in Brooklyn, New York, or the Bronx, New York, or Manhattan, or the other places had this built-in immunity. And so that's why it was so bad. We put all of these people together from different states into one area, and that's what was decimating these poor people.
How about now? We had all of this pandemonium, pandemic, and yet we have demonstrations.
Well,
we're supposed to separate. What is that about then?
That's an interesting thing. One of the things that happened in the pandemic of 1918 was that the mayor of Philadelphia was up for re-election, and every year they have this huge Boy Scout parade. And he was told that basically he would never get reelected again if he canceled the parade. So he did let the parade go through. There was over 100,000 people at this parade, and the entire city of Philadelphia got decimated by the pandemic. So, these demonstrations are dangerous, and they're not. I know that the demonstrations around by me, which because of my work with the police, I've been involved with, we had stands set up, handing out masks, giving instruction on what is considered to be social distancing. As a result of this, in my house, we practice anti-social distancing. and the other thing about this pandemic that the very valuable lesson the pandemic taught me is I now know who I don't want to be stranded on a desert. That's anyone related to me by blood. I don't want to be on a desert island.
I was caught in that elevator during the blackout in New York years ago, and I was stuck with Bobby V. I had to hear the Polish Prince, back to that again. But I had to hear Blue Velvet on a loop. No, seriously, I was caught in the elevator with Bobby.
No, you were caught on the elevator on New Year's Eve one day because I was there at the show, and Kramer had to take over.
And the amazing
the elevator
and the amazing Kreskin
and Kreskin. That was the New Year's Eve show. So
and that's when my manager became Otis, The elevator company. But, we've had a lot of fun through the years doing many things that were hysterically funny and not so serious. We've also learned a lot in our reading. And Albert, just for everybody to know, Al Wunsch, if you're just joining us, Al has a library in his home, which is, I would say, it probably rivals the library in New York with books. I mean, you got a ladder all the way across to get your books, right?
And I have my statue of Teddy Roosevelt, which I have not yet.
You haven't moved it. Well, I have the same collection you have. I have as many books as you have.
Yeah.
This is
except,
buddy.
Except you can't get autographs on those. I all signed.
Yeah. And your son likes baseball. But
I'm a New York Mets and Jets fan.
Yeah. Well, Al Sharpton doesn't want to see damn Yankees on Broadway. So, there's all these things that everybody wants to take down. They want to take everything down. It's ridiculous. But
I saw Damn Yankees on Broadway with Jerry Lewis, as the, Satan. And my date for the evening was Charlie Callas.
Oh, yeah. Well, Charlie and I we had an encounter for a while. Charlie would come and be on the show, and he was writing a book, which I don't know if he ever finished it. I don't think he did.
We did finish that, and we're still trying to shop it around, believe it or not.
Well, he was wonderful. He was first of all, he's one of the greatest guys ever. And you had a wine party every Friday, if we can talk about that for a minute.
We can.
But there were wines from all over the world, right? I mean, you were really wine. What do you call it?
A connoisseur.
There's another word.
Wino?
Yeah, that's it. You had a lot of imported wines and expensive wines, isn't that right? I mean,
Yeah, I would say that's fair to say. I mean, all of us. It's a group. It's called the Grape Escape Society, and it was all individuals that are wine collectors. And I've been collecting wine since I was 18, and so I mean, I have a very vast collection. Not as many bottles of wine as I have books, however. I have a lot more books than I have wine.
Well, I know that you went to Catholic Mass and you would wait for the priest to have wine and wine.
Yeah.
The water. It's dripping. You got to drink a lot of water, Did you know that?
Yes, I am certainly aware of that.
This is it's Italian. Why is the Italian water so popular? What does it have in it?
I don't know. Italian water, you got Italian coffee, you're all set.
Oh, yeah, well, that's true.
I got English breakfast tea here.
Yeah. Well, you have an office in New Jersey. I mean, I know you know that. I'm going to tell the viewers here. And you took time to do this tonight because I'm paying you a lot.
Yes.
I'm going to give you back all of your tapes or else I'm going to expose you. Blackmail.
No, don't have enough. I mean, let me put it this way. Considering the fact that at the Jewish Hour, I was either Woody Allen or Bill Cosby.
Yeah, do the Woody Allen thing. Do the Woody Allen. Come on.
It's I haven't done this in a long time. I don't understand, Joey, why you have a situation here where you have an individual who's been maligned. The word is maligned by the press, by his own son. Okay, nobody's doing demonstrations for me. One single demonstration. I don't. It's not fair. I stand before you, and I don't mean to be didactic, but give me a chance. That's what I have to say.
And that's great. And you do this in court.
Yes, I do.
And are you still doing the Bill Cosby?
Well, you see, the problem with Cosby is it kind of cuts down on your dating, if you understand where I'm
Were you surprised that he got indicted? And
yeah, I was very surprised. I mean, America's Dad, was that was quite a shock to me. And it's funny because I have, I have a notorious book collection, which is signed by, obviously people who are quite notorious. I have the Son of Sam. I have, Adolf Hitler. I mean, I have all these different horrendous human beings. And I had to move all my Bill Cosby over to the notorious.
My mother has an autograph from Jesus.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Jesus. He's from Puerto Rico.
I got one too. It's Jesus Alu. And
we've had a lot of fun in the Jewish Hour because we were there on a Friday night when Jews are not supposed to listen.
Right, exactly.
And it's remember Rabbi Shmuley?
Yes, of course. He lives in Englewood. It's a town next door to me.
Oh my God!
Now in years, but the last time I did see him, we were talking about reminiscing about the show.
His book was Kosher Sex.
Kosher Sex.
They say that some of these acts of violence. Well, he talks. He's on television a lot. I mean, he'll say anything to get attention. So he's great. He's great. It's really interesting. But I'd like to see him with Al Sharpton. I think the two of these guys going at it because
he was very good. He was very close to Michael Jackson.
Yeah, that's true. He was his advisor.
He was very close to Michael Jackson.
Yeah, and I would go to his house, a lot. And Shmuley had 8 kids. Remember that? I don't know if you know that about him.
No, I do. I know. Yeah. I pass his house every day.
Yeah.
He was trying to make into a temple so he could get a tax write-off.
Yeah, it was a Passover.
Yeah,
we passed over his house.
Pass over his house and no taxes to be paid.
That's right.
I tried the same thing on mine. It didn't really go over.
No, it doesn't work. No. So you're having success when everybody else is failing. So we all hate you. You're doing well, and we're dying here. Everybody I have on this show does not need a job, and I'm the only one out of work. Something's wrong here, Al.
We miss you on radio. That was the best. That show was. As I told you, I get asked all the time about the show and why it left and why it was no longer on, and it was a get together at night. There was a community of people who listened, regular listeners, and then people that would, if they were up, would put it on. And like they always said, you never knew what was going to happen, and you never knew who was going to be on. And it worked, and it worked for a long time. I mean, to your credit, that's a long time to be on in New York, and it was an exceptional performance.
Well, it was a pleasure, and always with you too. You're great, and you're very smart. You're a very smart attorney. I always trust you, and even now, I mean, you see where you're in the middle. You're not really picking a side, and you do it well. That's why you can represent people in good conscience and win cases, because the judge loves your Woody Allen. No, do you work a jury with that? I don't think you've ever done that, have you?
Yeah, no, not necessarily a good idea. I will actually impersonate the attorneys I'm up against.
Oh.
I will impersonate them, okay, and that'll make the jury laugh. That's how I work that one in. Or I can impersonate the judges, which is also something that'll get the jury to laugh.
Not a good idea, though, is it?
I got in trouble in a trial because of that. The judge actually called me over to sidebar with my co-counsel and said to me that there is a rule, an unwritten rule in the law, that you cannot be funnier than the judge. I'm looking at him going, and I'm hitting my co-counsel, and I go, "Is he serious?" And he goes, "I think he is," and he was serious. He was not happy that the jury were not laughing at his jokes, but they were cracking up on mine.
Did you ever get that title of Charlie Callas's book so we can give everybody this little shout out here?
It was called Keekless.
He was the guy, for people who are of age, that did an impression of Hermione Gingold of Gigi with what's his name again?
Marie Chevalier.
Yeah, Marie Chevalier. And it was a wonderful parody that he did. Charlie was a favorite of Jerry Lewis. He was a great comic.
And Mel Brooks. And Mel Brooks.
Yeah, Charlie was a regular guy. I mean, he was a really good guy to hang around with. Everybody loved him.
Yeah.
And he passed away. It was an unfortunate thing. His wife they moved to Vegas to be with the kids.
Right.
And she wanted him to move to Vegas, and then he went, and then he went along with it, although he never wanted to leave the East Coast. He never wanted to leave the Friars, never wanted to leave Jersey, and never wanted to leave the wine party.
That's correct.
But he did make it to Vegas to live, and his wife, I think she was walking by a shopping center and fell and tripped.
Yeah,
hit
she
her head.
fell in a parking lot, and she stumbled in a parking lot and fell and had broken her hip and was trapped on that pavement they don't know how long she was trapped on that pavement, and the heat, because I mean, obviously Vegas, that sun is incredible, and the asphalt and the heat dehydrated her terribly, and then she did not live much longer. She got to the hospital and they could not get her going. And
nobody came to her rescue either.
No one came to help her.
Yeah.
She was there for we don't know how long.
And that broke Charlie. That's what broke him.
Broke all of us. Eve was the nicest woman ever in the world, and it was just tragic. And then after that, Charlie was put in a home, and he just deteriorated from there.
I visited him
in Vegas.
Yeah, in the home.
Okay.
Do you know there were only 6?
You did tell me that. That's right. You did tell me.
There were only 6 people in that home. It was not a big, it was a house with room for 6 special people, and they took good care of him. I love him. I brought this up. It's sad, but you were so connected with him, and he was so funny, and we had so many good times. And I like to talk about it because I think people get on the air and they don't tell some of these stories about the background. It's always about Bed Bath and Beyonce and some stupid thing that Justin Bieber did. And what the hell, are we going to do this all our lives? No, because I'm not 22, right? But the thing is that there are people who were great, and they were real also. Good acting and real, both. Pat Cooper's another one. I love Pat.
Pat is another good friend, and unfortunately, he's my understanding is that he's kind of not.
He's retired. Can't hear.
Yeah,
can't hear. He said, "I don't want to do stand-up because I don't hear anybody." And I said, "Well, no, you don't hear the applause, but you also don't hear the complaints. So you hear both." He said, "I didn't hear you." But he was a great guy.
He was also having trouble remembering his jokes and remembering his lines. Which, I mean, that happens. And he just said, he goes, if I can't put a great product, why am I going to, why would I do that? Then I'm shaming my own profession. And, it takes a lot to be able to do that. Because I remember working with Henny Youngman, who, I mean, they basically prodded him up onto a stage. He stood there, he rattled off 75 one-liners, and then, they prodded him off the stage. Depressing as hell. And he was opening up for me. That ought to tell you how bad his career had gone.
The only one I ever saw run the distance and work the distance is Chuck Berry.
Oh, yeah. Chuck Berry was another nightmare.
Did the duck walk at 95?
I worked with him at Club Benet, where, he was basically, he would go out and just take any local musician because he refused to spend the money to bring a band. So he would get local musicians, and they wouldn't rehearse because he was like, well, everybody knows my songs. And they would go up there, and then they would play.
Well, I think we had a good time, too, at Lincoln Center. One of your favorite artists, you know what I'm talking about? He had 2 days.
Elvis Costello?
Yes, Elvis Costello. Now, the one day was all of his hit songs, and the next day was his favorite songs. Isn't that how they did it?
No. He did a
2 concerts.
An opera. Remember?
What was it? An opera?
Yeah.
But I thought he was very clever because when he walked out, he got everybody to stand up, and that's how he got a standing ovation before he even performed. But
yes, except from you, who was booing.
No, I did not. But that's David Bowie.
And we were sitting right right near his wife, too. And there you are booing. And then you took the CD from it. They gave us a CD, and it hadn't been released yet. And then you played it that night on your radio show. without any permission, and I'm sure no royalties that went to Elvis. But that's another story. The statute of limitations has run, so you have nothing to worry about.
Thank you. We've done so many things illegally without. If you don't know it, is it okay?
Yeah. Well, ignorance is not. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse.
No. Well, so what are we doing now? What are you going to be doing? You got Court TV. What's that about?
Got Court TV. I'm back. We just handled. I was there right before the pandemic with the Weinstein trial, and now I'm back dealing with the murder of those 2 children in Idaho, and the so-called cult murder, as they're calling it, which is just the epitome of just horrendous, and also just the epitome of stupid. I mean, if you're gonna kill your kids, you try to flee to a place that doesn't have extradition. You don't go to Hawaii, which is part of the United States. I taught the man who they brought back from Hawaii.
So how do they call it a cult? How was that a cult thing?
Well, he had this religious group that he was a pastor of, that he indoctrinated his wife into, and it's his 3rd wife, I think. And it is the world is going to end. I think they're betting on July 22nd. So when they asked me what was the first thing you would say to this guy if you were his attorney, I would say the first thing I would do is get my retainer up front, because July 22nd is that far away.
Well, you're a good guy and you're a good friend. I hope someday you represent me.
I have represented you.
Oh, you did? Did we win?
Yes. Well, we had a couple of cases. And then we had a couple of contracts, and we did hit TV for a while. So
yeah, it's good. So now we're going to do it again.
It did.
Am I too old for this?
No, never. Look at the people running for president.
Oh, that's true. Albert Wunsch, what a guy! What a great guy! And leave it to you to have Weinstein, who's got wine in his name. I mean, you can't get away from that.
No, never.
You didn't have any drinks before you did this today, did you?
Just my English breakfast tea.
So Albert Wunsch, how do we find you? Got a website? Or do we
No, actually, I don't. All my business is word of mouth. Everything comes through referrals. I don't have a website, and I don't do any advertising. And all my business comes through recommendations.
And a whistleblower.
Well,
yeah.
Not necessarily whistleblowing. Sometimes they whistle at me, but that's beside the point.
All right, so we want to put together a deal, go back on television, okay? We want to be on television, radio, and the internet, because it's all one now. What do you think?
Back to NASDAQ? We go back there, where I could never find good parking?
I did.
Yeah, I know you did. Yeah, because you didn't care. You had the New York. You had your press plates that I mean, but how many cars did you lose up to that point?
Oh, many. But I love you, Al, and thank you for being with me during this time.
Look forward to it. Hopefully, again, someday we'll get on.
All right, Al Wunsch, let a smile be your umbrella, but don't get a mouthful of rain.